terrible, and I'm just like, okay, well now everybody's infected.
Gonna
So.
feel terrible.
Oh well.
Have you heard anybody else? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I hate to be that guy that like interrupts the conversation because you're probably having a good one, but intro's over, folks. Time to get this thing started. It is episode number 27 of the Final Split, and joining us today, we have an interesting cast today, a rather eclectic bunch. For the first time in show history, we have an inanimate guest in the green box. We have Tass Attack, which I am pleased to introduce to you guys as, I believe, the first of its kind 24/7 tool-assisted speedrun stream. Just showcasing various runs rather from Tass videos. It's got a cool voting system going on it, so you can vote for what one you watch next. And so we'll kind of leave that up there throughout the show. I don't think we'll get through more than maybe one or two Tasses during the show, but an interesting stream nonetheless, worth checking out.
They move pretty
Yeah,
fast.
you never know.
You never know.
It could be Gimmick was the last one that played before we started in 7 minutes.
That's
a good
over
one.
very quickly, yeah. So yeah, a pretty cool stream. Excited to see what comes of that. But in the human side of things, in the red box, we have Spike Vegeta. How was your week?
In the less talented boxes.
In the suboptimal boxes, yeah.
Speaking of suboptimal, so I played Shovel Knight for the first time yesterday.
How'd that go?
Home. And what a fun video game. As bad as I am in video games, I think that was a fun stream. I had a lot of fun with it. Really, it's a really fair game. The music's awesome. I love the art design and everything. I actually think the length of it is good. Like, I don't know if anybody hasn't taken the time to play it yet.
Definitely one of my favorite casual plays of the year. It's just, I don't know.
Absolutely great game, yeah.
Just an overall good time. Also with us today is Dusler in the blue box. He's our human guest of the week. How's it going?
We're getting less and less optimal as the guests come along.
Well, in that case, I introduced myself last, so
Nice.
I haven't introduced
set it
me.
up really well.
Yeah. So, what have you been up to?
Oh man, just kind of reeling off what was the meetup, and then my work schedule is actually really weird. So I work 2 weeks at a time and 2 weeks off. So that's why my stream's spotty at times. But I actually just got back from work a couple days ago. So
Welcome back. Good to have you back. And we'll get to talking a little bit about DeuceCon in just a little bit here. But first, we're going to kick things off with our press start topic of the week as we load up that slideshow thingy that shows the thing. Yeah, I don't know. I'm very
It gets the points.
I'm very elaborate today with my words. All right, so DreamHack Winter's schedule has been released. Now, this is, I believe, the second appearance of speedrunning at DreamHack.
Yep.
And the winter iteration of it. The schedule is out now. We have access to seeing what games have been officially accepted, including what is the DreamHack Arena, which is kind of a spotlight thing that they do where they allow the marathon to take place inside of kind of a live theater-style audience. And so we have lists of both of these, and I guess I'm just wondering if you guys have opinions on what you see and what you think about it.
Well, the biggest thing that jumps out to me is it feels like they're not. It feels like these are the big guns that they've got going at this marathon. Especially someone like Team Ludendi. They've got a lot of, obviously, their they've got their cult following, maybe somewhat obscure NES games that their community likes to run. Some community games they like. It feels like for the most part, you go up and down the list, it's just Zelda, Mario, Batman Arkham Asylum, you got Deus Ex, Mega Man X, you got some Castlevanias on here, Ninja Gaidens. It just feels like they're kind of hitting you back and forth with all these big name titles. And it makes me wonder if in the game selection process that they put together, that they really tried to highlight almost moving towards like the AGDQ style. We need big games, we need big names that are going to bring people in, that are give us a bigger chance to, because obviously they're having a good time there, but you want to try to make people stop who aren't into as many of these retro games, but they'll say, "Oh, I know what Mario Kart is. I know what Super
Right.
Mario 64 is. I can stop." There's a greater chance that they might develop that kind of crowd. Because I know they didn't have the greatest response. They were kind of
Well,
they
yeah.
stuck out, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes to show like what kind of event DreamHack is, and the typical audience of DreamHack. I mean, it's traditionally very strongly associated with PC and especially esports, multiplayer, competitive games, and so speedrunning kind of jumps into the fray as this out of place element. It's not a PC experience exclusively. It's very retro in most cases, and the audience that's attending DreamHack is typically teenagers who probably aren't, unless they're
We're not alive
unless
when
they're
a lot of
big,
these
Minecraft and
right?
first-person shooters.
That's
for
right.
days.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're about their League and their Dota. So it's an interesting element when you put that into DreamHack, and I'm excited to see that DreamHack wants to continue that relation and try to strengthen it, I guess, over what was offered in the first case, because it did kind of feel like when we were interviewing some of the folks at DreamHack there, it did kind of feel like they were shoved aside essentially and kind of put in this hallway in this corner,
Literally.
literally in the corner. Yeah. And it wasn't just speedrunners either. It was kind of just like the Twitch personalities that they had invited to that event. I was told that there were some, WoW streamers and just other personalities invited from Twitch, and they kind of all got shoved into this
They were
corner.
in the same area, weren't they? It looked like there was kind of like a corridor where they were
Yeah.
almost half mooned, and you could kind of see other streams behind the speedrunners themselves.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see if this builds on that and maybe tries to establish more of an audience. Dusler, did you get a chance to see?
What really stood out to me was it seems like there's a lot of racing games more so than you see in other marathons. I mean, they're opening with Mario Kart 64, which is pretty cool because that's, like you said, it's a familiar game, and a lot of the skips that they do, people can relate to, and so it's kind of like, oh man, did you see that? That's pretty impressive to hit consistently over 3 laps.
Sure.
And then there's kind of a block the next day where it's like Mario Kart Double Dash, Crash Team Racing, Wave Race 64, like boom, all in a row. And, they're all racing games, but there is a little bit of variety there, and they're kind of showcasing different systems. And I don't know how familiar you guys are with racing game speedruns, but Mario Kart Double Dash to me is kind of one of the more exciting ones. A lot of people seem like they kind of skipped over that game almost, during that era. But yeah, that really stood out to me. And then some of the Master System games that are kind of getting some love there, like Wise being in the arena, which kind of surprised me. It's a shorter game, it's 10 minutes, but it was like, that's an interesting choice.
Yeah.
And also Alex Kidd and Sonic Spinball, which are both pretty prominent titles on that system, but those getting the love that they are getting is pretty cool because there's not really a big Master System speedrunning following.
Yeah, I agree with that. And kind of building off what you said, looking at what's scheduled to be in the arena, I'm kind of curious what some of the decision making was behind that, because my understanding and impression of the arena was that in order to bring people into it, you kind of had to have these they had to be races, they had to be close between 2 people, and what I'm seeing here on the arena schedule, at least if this is up to date, maybe it's changed. But I'm seeing a lot of the opposite of that. Whereas, you're kind of expecting races. I'm only seeing the Ocarina of Time any % race, which I guess obviously that's going to be kind of
huge,
the main event, the main draw, pulling in Cosmo and Joden Stone. It looks like it's going to be a 4-way race actually with Dr. M and Grokken as well.
And all on the IQ, interesting enough.
Yeah. So 50-minute estimate, by the way. I thought that was generous. So
that Hess at the end, man, is
you just
could
never
be on that for days.
liked it so much the first time they'll have to race again. I don't know what that's.
Did you notice that? I just noticed this actually. I looked at the schedule earlier, but Tetrisphere says that it's blindfolded.
It's blindfolded, yeah. And I thought about that. I thought about that for a minute, and it does strike me as a game that you can brute force. So I don't know if that's particularly like I'm curious to see if the blindfolded element really amplifies the experience there, or if it's just one of those like, oh, this game is so easy I can blindfold it. I'm kind of curious.
Is there really a game you can do blindfolded that is super easy though?
That's a good question.
On
Maybe
that
not.
Scale,
No,
you
I mean,
know?
I would think there's definitely some difficulty added to it, obviously, but
Right.
And
I'm
I think
curious
no
to
matter
see.
what, again, if you're playing to the more casual audience, like to a lot of us, like we can kind of look down our nose at it and say,
Yeah.
okay, we
Right.
like everything's being blindfolded these days. But this might be like a new experience for a lot of
Right.
these people who
Well,
are
and I
like,
guess that's kind of my
anything
Yeah.
blindfolded.
That's kind of my concern or my question, maybe not a concern so much as just a question, like, will it resonate as much as like Mike Tyson's Punch Out blindfolded? I mean, that's
Oh,
a game
sure.
that people immediately recognize as
I don't
difficult,
know.
and you take the blindfolded element and it just wows people. And I kind of wonder, can a game like Tetrisphere do the same thing? But yeah, I mean, just looking at the arena, I'm wondering, where are the races? It seems like they've kind of disappeared compared to last year. So we do have the 70-star race between Hampton and Noisy. It looks like, I'm not sure if this is a race or if it's just co-op, but there's Max Payne 2 going on as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
I'd imagine that would be a race. I
I'm
can't
guessing it
think
must
of
be.
anything that- yeah.
Well, and this is the same thing it goes back to, again, with the actual just straight up speedrunning marathons that we organize, the GDQs. How do you balance? Are there quote unquote too many races going on? Do you, like, where is that balance where certain games are going to benefit from just having one runner and like really good commentary, having the audience focus in? Because it's hard for the speedrunning audience to watch some speed games and not miss a bunch of minute details that might be fascinating, but they're sacrificing that for just watch this race, just watch these 2, 3, 4 people who are at the highest level in this game, and just trust that it's going to be a close race and that's what you're going to be focusing in on.
Right. Yeah, I
think
guess.
that's tough too, though, is knowing if the race is going to be close, because we all know that it is a race, and you always run that risk with, regardless of how good Cosmo is at OOT or Grokken or whoever it ends up being, is one mistake and you can be, a minute behind somebody. And then if you do a bunch of races like that and you have maybe 2 or 3 where somebody gets way behind, then it not only is detrimental to the race itself, but then people, I don't know if they question possibly the validity of that speed run, because it's like, okay, well, why is this guy so much better than this guy? And it's kind of like a
Yeah.
fine line you have to walk, when doing races of something so highly
Yeah.
optimized.
I mean, I will say this. I like that it ends on the Ocarina of Time race because I do feel like that is the peak of the arena. I just kind of question if some of the games before it are going to pull people in and keep them there for that
For sure.
duration of time. Some of the games on there, I would question maybe there are other ones throughout the weekend that would be better suited for that kind of arena setting. But it is nice to see that maybe some games that wouldn't otherwise get a chance to have that, the theatrical setting or whatever, they kind of get their moments as well. I'm
Yeah.
just wondering if there will be an audience there. Will the seats get filled? For some
And
of
that's
those
the
games?
hardest thing. I'm sure for Eden All or whoever was the group of people that put this schedule together, there's a part of you that, no matter what, really wants to just be a lover of your craft and say, hey, you know what? We're into this sort of stuff. I want to highlight games like, I don't know, Alex Kidd or YS or like any of these games that maybe not a lot of people know about, but we really enjoy them. But you have to then say, for the better of the event, for the better of bringing more people to this
Right.
audience, like, do you have to sacrifice that and say, sorry, we got to load up the marathon room, the big arena with your Marios and your Zeldas and everything.
Right, and it's not to say that they're absent. I mean, we do have Mega Man X, Mario 64, Ocarina of Time. I mean,
Sure.
they're all in there, but they're kind of scattered throughout. They're not, it's not back to back to back or anything like that. It is kind of separated between these other single player runs. So
Right.
I'm curious to see, and I'm also curious to see if Cosmo going over there makes a significant impact on the audience that's
say,
there.
yeah.
I think the Cosmo Jodenstone rivalry, I think that has some potential to bring people in.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how that plays out. But I guess for now we'll leave it at that, and we'll probably run into this topic a couple more times along the way. It is coming up pretty soon, though. I believe it is the end of this month.
Yeah, the 27th.
November 27th. Yep.
So, yeah, not too far away already. All right. Well, with that, let's go ahead and move on to our interview. And it's kind of marathon season. That's why I titled the episode that way. It feels like there's been a lot of marathons already. There's a lot of them coming up, or just events in general. But one of them that just went down recently was DeuceCon, and Deusler, obviously, the organizer of that. So I guess just let's start with what motivated you to create DeuceCon, and how did it kind of get the ball rolling.
Okay. Just so you know, I'm probably long-winded in many regards. So, but DeuceCon actually started probably about a year and a half ago, like right around when I actually started streaming. I started streaming. I lived in Alaska still, so I live in Texas now. But so when I lived in Alaska, being a part of this community and being so separated from it at the same time was kind of difficult because to go to AGDQ, to go to SGDQ, to try to go to ESA, any of these bigger events that, obviously I watch and contribute to with donations and people I talk to online, you get to see them in person. And that's like a really cool thing. And so for me to be able to attend those coming from Alaska was pretty much unheard of because the time off of work and getting plane tickets. And so I kind of mentioned it, when I maybe the first month or two I had started streaming, like, man, if I ever move out of Alaska, which was always my intention, was I'm going to have a community meetup that isn't AGDQ or SGDQ for people like me who can't make it to the bigger events, who, there's a lull in like from June to January where there's not really any events going on. And some people can get time off work then where they can't for the GDQ. So it'd be cool to do a little community meetup. And a lot of smaller streamers that I associate with and have been friends with since I began streaming, are like, man, I'm not going to go to a GDQ if I can't get a run. And this was, prior to 500 people being there when it was really
Right.
like a big social event and a big thing, and it was smaller and it was, I don't know, 50 to 100 people. And like everybody there had a run. And it was just like, well, if you don't have a run, you don't really go to these things.
Right.
So,
It kind of felt like everybody got their game.
yeah. And so it kind of came from there. And then by the time I got to Texas, actually, I had kind of had things in swing and I really started planning them. And just talking to all my friends online, which was a much smaller group then than it is now. Like, yeah, you guys need to come to my house. We'll hang out and play video games pretty much. Maybe we'll stream it. And then it just seemed like one day I was playing Kid Dracula and Spike and Duckfist came into my stream and Duckfist had mentioned something like, yeah, man, I would totally come to that. And it was like, there's people actually interested in doing more things than GDQs, And so then I kind of started reaching out and seeing that the community was like, yeah, let's do meetups.
So it kind of stemmed from just a desire to have an event that you and others could attend outside of, the GDQs, but also to give everybody a chance to just play something and hang out.
Yeah, that was basically my big thing was always, I want the people there to do the runs that they want to do, because a lot of people will submit 5 runs to AGDQ and like, okay, I'm going to put out my 5 bangers so I have a better chance. Like this game is pretty well known.
Right.
I have a good time in it, so I'm going to put that out there. I haven't run it in a while, but I'll derust just for the GDQ. But it was, what game are you running right now? Are you running Battle Kid 2 for Duckfist or, some obscure game that they really love running that is not going to get into a GDQ because...
Right. If I try to offer, Game Boy, fill in the blanks.
Right. And so that's basically where I wanted to go with it was let's do a meetup that's not only about really cool games that the speedrunning community will appreciate, but it's a game you want to run that you don't get to showcase very often. And then you just get to come and hang out with people in the community that otherwise you wouldn't get to meet if you weren't going to a GDQ. And it's a more intimate setting as far as, I haven't been to a GDQ yet, but I'd imagine with 500 people in a large room, you don't get a lot of one-on-one time with everybody. And so like at DeuceCon, you're hanging out with the people, you're up close and personal, you're running games together, and that's the core group of people there is who you hang out with. And I think everybody really built relationships with each other because of that, and that's kind of the goal.
So as far as people who had attended, you kind of, I guess, opened it up to everybody on the forums, but were you expecting to get mostly people that you knew, or were you surprised by anybody that, offered that maybe you weren't familiar with, or you're kind of just inviting everybody like, hey, this is my house, come on over?
Yeah, it was kind of a sticky situation to be in, really, because I'm married, and my wife was kind of like, yeah, I mean, dude, you can have whoever you want over. Just make sure they aren't a serial killer, basically, And so opening it up into the forums, I got a lot of people I expected that I had talked to previously. But a lot of guys that offered a little bit later in the game when I was already pretty much had the schedule in place, and it got a lot more attention than I initially had thought it would, especially I wouldn't even say with people attending or people wanting to attend this year, but just people, going into random streams that I'd never been in before. I knew who the runners were, and people in chat would be like, "Oh man, DeuceCon, I'm really hyped for that," and just like, how did you even hear about DeuceCon? Like,
Right.
oh, everybody heard about it, just kind of like, where is this coming from? So it was really cool to get support from not only the people attending, but there's people I'd see who weren't attending who would have like the DeuceCon banner on their stream and
Just
"Oh,
trying
hey, you
to
should check this
offer
out,"
some
and that was
offer
really
support.
cool.
Yeah. So I guess another question I have is there's kind of a temptation, as you continue to do these events. If you, like, first of all, I guess I have to ask you if there's plans for a second one, but then also if there are, there's kind of a temptation for these kind of events to grow. And so my question to you is, would you want it to be the same style that you had this year, where it was kind of a smaller event, it took place at your house, or do you see it growing, and would you want it to grow? Or, what kind of event do you prefer, I guess is what I'm trying to ask. Do you like that smaller setting?
The smaller setting itself was actually really cool, and it helped me because I had a chance to really learn a lot about the actual organization of the event and how I can accommodate the people that are there. And so that was good. I've really actually, for the last week, been tormented about whether I want to try to make the event bigger next year or I want to keep it at my home. Because this year we were pretty much at max capacity for my house.
Sure.
And I think the most people we had at one time was probably 17. But at the same time, I don't want to lose that intimacy that you get in a meetup like this. And so if I were to open it up, which I'm not opposed to at all, it's really hard to say how many people I'd want to let in, what kind of venue I'd want it to be in. I'd prefer to keep it at my house, but honestly, with the feedback that I've been getting from people after this year, I don't know if I could actually do that. And that's the thing, I don't want to turn anybody away.
Right.
This year I had to turn people away because I didn't really expect it to garner any sort of attention at all. And a month before the event, I'm just getting private messages like, "Yo, dude, I live 4 hours west of you. Can I come play this game? I live north of you. I live in Oklahoma." Like,
yeah, everybody
okay, wow.
knocking on the door. Yeah.
But I'd really like it to be an event that people can attend and have fun and get runs in, and kind of not have to worry about the pressure of, man, I hope I have good donation incentives. I hope that my run will raise money, because as amazing as everything that GDQs do, it's still mind-boggling to me that we can get together and play video games and raise $1 million over a week. That's just
Right.
crazy, but I'd like to take that pressure off and just, even if I don't do an event like that, if somebody else takes what I've tried to do and says, okay, I can take that and improve on it and build on it and make an event on the East Coast that's really big and have people come, or the West Coast or Midwest or wherever it may be, and hopefully get people kind of motivated to do more community-driven events that are just for the love of speedrunning and don't really have any monetary incentive.
And I guess that was going to be a question there, so you kind of answered one of my questions. But a lot of times it feels like the charity is just something that people instantly associate with speedrunning. Like, if you're doing a speedrunning event, there's got to be a charity attached, and and you kind of sound like the bad guy when you say,
right,
like, I'm not gonna do charity with my, you know what I mean? It's you're just trying to get people together to have fun, and you want your weekend, and
absolutely,
it is a lot. It is extra work if you're trying to keep track of donation incentives and file names and all of that. So it definitely, it's a different level of interaction, I guess. You're focused more on the people that are at the event than, I guess, the home interaction with, and I guess not to say, like, obviously, like, you can still chat and stuff and participate that way, but it's less about the like external factors, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, and more about just the marathon, the event itself. I think that's really cool. We've seen that a couple of other times now too, with like I guess not necessarily the same type of event, but Chicagothon is kind of a local event there where they're getting people together in that area. And just this idea that it doesn't have to be a GDQ for people to get together. I think that's a really cool.
And I
Cool
think
concept.
there's a big enough space. That was really one of the driving factors for me wanting to do it was there's a long enough period of time between GDQs that I think we have room for events to take place that people can warrant going to. You know, you can go to AGDQ, you can go to SGDQ. I'll just use DeuceCon as place filler because that's the only event right now that I can think of. But like, okay, so this year I'm going to community events. I'm going to AGDQ, SGDQ, obviously, and then hopefully I can go to DeuceCon, or whatever event may be in the future. And it's like I want something like that for people to be able to go to, or people can't go to DC. And so, well, I can go to Texas, though, that kind of thing.
Right.
It's just geographically,
And
it's in a different enough location for some people. I think it's more feasible.
Right. And it's a lot easier for you to say, hey, I'm just taking a day off to go to DeuceCon than, hey, I'm taking the whole week off to.
I had to get fired from my job. To
Right.
go to AGDQ, so.
had to beg my manager to give me time off in advance.
That
So,
that's another thing that's difficult. Having an event that isn't a GDQ though, and I don't know if people realize, but if you're looking for people to come and run, you're contending with GDQs for their time off, and so the bigger runners we can say, or anybody that regularly goes to a GDQ is they're kind of battling with themselves like, okay, do I want to go to SGDQ, which I know is going to be amazing and there's going to be everybody I'd ever want to meet there, or do I want to take a chance, especially this year for me? I could tell some people were hesitant because it's like, okay, this event has never happened before.
right.
I'm unknown, so that's another factor playing into this. If Rom Scout puts an event on like this or somebody else, it's like, oh, okay, well, he knows what he's doing. And so like, okay, who are you again? You play what games? Like, okay, your times are how bad? That kind of thing. And so
I'd trust you more if you had a 40.
I would trust me more too. But I'm hoping that after this year, regardless of Pugs resetting games or throwing up on the couch or whatever, that people will be more willing to come and kind of venture out, and because there's a lot of really cool people that don't get notoriety and are smaller streamers and will always be smaller streamers, and they're still really great people that are really good at video games and love it just as much as we all do. And so to meet those people, I think, is really special in such an intimate setting, and just you get to hang out and know them on a personal level and not know them for their Ocarina of Time run or whatever it is. And that's really, for me, what makes trying to get an event together worth it, because I really made friends, and are planning on doing co-op runs with people now and talk to people on the phone, and just like, it's a really cool thing that your interaction online changes completely over what it used to be, because you get to hang out with these people and know them on a personal level.
Right. So not to get negative or anything, but
Let's do it.
All right, time to take a dip. Right. So talking about the DeuceCon that just went by,
Yeah.
what are, other than Pugs, turning off video game stuff, what are
Yeah.
other things that you feel like going forward, elements that would improve the marathon going forward?
It's hard for me to say from the stream side of things. I got relatively positive feedback from people who actually watched the stream. Fortunately, the technical difficulties we did have were fairly short-lived and kind of got handled quickly. As far as the event itself, I thought that I was organized. I had started planning in April. I had dates set.
A lot
I
earlier
had
than
a
most.
schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so even with that, and it was a constant, man, what can I do to make this better for the people coming? How can I make the run smoother for them? Still definitely had some faults. The biggest thing for me was the practice room. And I know people have heard me talk about this before. I was completely underprepared in that regard. The TV I had mentioned prior to the show that I purchased just cuts out randomly, so you can't really practice on it. And then fortunately, a lot of the local people really stepped up and helped me out a lot, which was huge. Lobos Jr. and Pixel K brought food 2 days in a row for everybody, which you don't really think about stuff like that, but it's like, okay, there's 15 guys here
Right.
and girls.
Gonna have to feed
We're doing
people.
these big runs.
Yeah.
I have to leave my house, but how am I going to leave my house right now?
Right. And if you don't feed the hungry, feed the hungry people, they're gonna riot. So
Yeah. But that, and then Square Wave brought a TV for the practice room, and Paskey brought his RGB monitor, and then we actually streamed off of Nerm's TV that he brought. And so without them bringing those,
So
we would have been in big trouble.
it really
you know?
was just kind of a collaboration between all the attendees
Yeah.
to make it work. I guess one more question here. Favorite moments from DeuceCon? There's got to be some personal favorites of yours.
What
There's
did we
definitely
not
some
know?
stuff behind the scenes that were pretty awesome. One of the early ones, Deln and Einbert actually came early, and they had never been to In-N-Out Burger, and so we went, and I asked the guy at In-N-Out Burger for the little paper hats, and so we kind of rocked those for the rest of the
All
day.
right.
And man, I really, for me, I was worried about my dogs because they're way spoiled, but just the interaction that they had with everybody was, I think they kind of stole the spotlight in some of the runs, to be honest, where they're on the couch just
Taking over.
being ridiculous. But yeah, really, best personal moments probably just playing co-op games in the practice room when I did get a chance to get away, and going in and just kind of spectating and seeing other runners explain their run to the people in the practice room, and you see 4 or 5 people that have never run this game just staring like, whoa.
Yeah. So
You know,
it's,
and
it's
it's
funny
just
though,
like,
like
oh, yeah,
even at the
here's
local
the-
event, the answer to the question is still the same, and it seems like the backroom stuff is the reason. The
It's really
marathon
an
itself is one
interesting
thing, but
thing,
a lot
you
of
know,
things
that-
happening in the back room.
Yeah, it's one of those things you just, until you've been in that situation, I've always heard that from people attending GDQs and stuff too, and it's just, there's something special about the off-screen stuff going on with the games, and explaining exactly what's going on with glitches, and everybody just kind of crowding around and being in awe of somebody playing a game that we all are familiar with, but actually watching, for example, watching Garrison play Donkey Kong Country at like the highest possible level anybody has ever played that game. And I'm sitting in the chair I am right now looking over at the TV, and I've seen it online a million times.
Right.
But to see him holding a controller and doing everything, you're just like, oh, okay, so it's not, the task that's
He
up
didn't
above you right now.
he didn't make that up. He actually can do that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
so it's pretty crazy.
That's
Reminds
pretty
me of well, not random. It's going off of what you just said, but Stryker talking about watching Garrison for this AGDQ 2014 this year. Watch him just practicing, I guess, the Metroid room, and just like
Yeah.
the way he had to hold the controller to get
Yeah.
like optimal movement was so crazy to watch. And it is like we watch those all the time. We've seen Garrison do, hundreds of Super Metroid runs, but
Exactly.
once you actually see it in person, it's a completely different thing. You find appreciation for games that maybe you didn't feel like you cared about, but once you actually see them in person, it's just this whole other thing. It's pretty exciting.
and it's weird because it's like you get your own personal stream. Like it's not,
sure.
you know what I mean? Like if it's just you and the runner there, and they're doing the commentary. Anyway, 9 out of 10 people in the practice room are still doing their commentary like while they're practicing. They're just,
Right.
it's just natural for them at this point.
Yeah,
like,
that's
hey,
that's a good point.
so yeah, pretty cool. I'm assuming that we'll have some chat questions for sure. A little bit later in the show, so
We'll see.
we'll hint at the chat right now that they should come up with some, because we'll have plenty of time to talk about that later. But we've got some more topics to get to here in the show, so let's do that first, and then we'll get back to it. So it is time for me to quit stalling, because there it goes. It finally played. It's time for the Real Talk segment, and guys, here it is. Not much longer than expected, or I guess, what am I trying to say? It's there wasn't a long period of time between the disbanding of Crystals for Life and the
Absolutely.
announcement of Limit Break, which is the kind of the spiritual successor, I guess you could say,
Sure.
for the RPG Marathon. And that is currently actually accepting submissions right now. I believe it goes through the 10th, so there are 2 more days of
But to
submissions.
say, not too much longer though. You've got to get in there. So
Now, Limit Break. Let's see. I'm trying to picture in my head what I would think people would submit, and then I'm going to compare it to what's actually been submitted so far. So traditionally, like Crystals for Life, I think it was kind of predominantly assumed to be, games in the Final Fantasy series or games, that are closely related to that series. Although we certainly saw some different games outside of those, and now I think we're starting to see that it really is, just about anything you can think of as far as RPGs go. We're seeing some Western RPGs in there. I've seen things like Diablo 3 was offered. I've seen Fable was offered. I mean, obviously your Final Fantasies are still there. Your Dragon Warriors are there. But
like Deus Ex was offered right there. Yeah. So it almost made me wonder, like, could stuff like, you always got the argument, is Zelda an RPG? Could stuff like that have possibly been offered? And would they have really turned it down?
I feel like just kind of knowing the people in the community and being involved in it, stuff like Zelda, obviously we all love Zelda games and everything, but it seems like it's almost an unspoken kind of rule, like, okay, here's Limit Break, an RPG marathon,
right?
Save your Zelda submission.
Give my game a chance. Like,
give us FFT.
That's right.
Like, we want the stuff that AGDQ is turning down. That,
well, and that's what's really unique about this marathon. And Crystals for Life had this too, but Limit Break's going to see it as well, where there are a lot of games that just aren't going to be, I guess you could say, suited for a GDQ now, because the GDQs are so focused on dollars per hour, that kind of thing, entertainment value for the average viewer. And I think there is an audience for RPG speedruns, but it's not necessarily that same core audience that's going to be watching the majority of the GDQ. So it's cool to see that a lot of games that otherwise would just kind of get tossed out the window, they kind of get their moment to shine, so to speak. And that means that longer games are getting in. I'm seeing estimates here of 7-9 hours.
Absolutely.
And multiple games from the same series, whereas, in a GDQ experience, you might see, one Final Fantasy and that's it, or, one non-Final Fantasy RPG and that's it. We're starting to see I've seen Wild Arms 3 and 4 on this list. People are offering multiple games from the same series, so it'd be interesting to see what all gets, selected in the end.
And there's a lot of really good stuff here, like you talked about. I remember first looking at the list earlier this week, and I guess I just didn't notice, but you've got Final Fantasy 1 offered on multiple versions. You've got 18 offers of Final Fantasy 4/2. I don't think I'm exaggerating too much on that. You got FF6, 7, 8, 9. You got a bunch of mainstream Final Fantasy games. You've got your Chrono Trigger, but you've also got a lot of other stuff. There's a lot of Wild Arms, Mega Man Battle Network. And I think it's cool that they're not taking this extreme approach to it like both of the Crystals for Life marathons did, where first Crystals for Life, like you said, it was all Final Fantasy. Second Crystals for Life, it was all non-Final Fantasy. And so we saw, as much as a lot of people out there love a lot of the non-Final Fantasy JRPGs, it made for actually a less successful marathon donation-wise. So now they're going to be able to say, all right, we're going to be able to mix those in. We're going to be able to cater to a lot of different kinds of JRPG audiences. And the thing about this marathon is that the reason why we're seeing less JRPGs, less of these long 3D Final Fantasies and whatnot in the AGDQs is not because they don't do well donation-wise. Don't deny that for a second. Mike would love nothing more than to get a 3D Final Fantasy into each of these marathons, but there's just so much backlash from the community that it takes up too much time.
Yeah, and that's really, I think, what it is now at this point is that in order for you to accept an RPG into a GDQ, it's really got to be worth every minute. As far as there are when you think about the quantity of games being submitted to GDQs. One long RPG can knock out 10 or 12 submissions from other people, and so it becomes that much harder to convince yourself, hey, this is really worth sticking in there. So it is cool to see that there is a marathon that almost doesn't. I'm sure they care to some extent, but it's almost the estimate isn't part of the decision process as far as whether or not this game deserves to be in. The estimate kind of is just assumed as hey, RPGs are long games. But I do think what you'll see too with this marathon is that you'll see viewers sticking around 4 entire games. It's not going to be the type of marathon where someone tunes in for 30 minutes and says, okay, hey, what game's going on now? I just kind of want to check in. And no, I think people are going to really follow it through to kind of experience either a game that they've remembered fondly, or maybe one that they haven't. So,
well, the RPG community too, as far as speedrunning goes, I know Spike's probably seen it, having run Kingdom Hearts and things like that. But previously running Final Fantasy and being involved in that Final Fantasy IV community, is as many people as watch these RPG speedruns, it's still a really niche community. And so all the Final Fantasy IV runners, if we all had 200 viewers, they'd all be the same 200 viewers.
Sure.
Because the same people are tuning into a lot of these RPGs, because it is a completely different mentality and it is a completely different mindset for people viewing. And I guess I don't want to say it's a more mature crowd, but it really is, and all the Final Fantasy relays that we peaked at 5,000 during Final Fantasy IV in the first relay Poexel put on. And I don't think there was any ASCII spam. There wasn't any emote spam. It was all questions based upon the game, about the runners. And so the community that's watching these games are interested in seeing 7-hour 2 runs, because
I guess
they love this niche little RPG speed run that these
Yeah,
guys.
I was gonna say, I guess to kind of counter that, or to explain it, or justify it, is it seems to me like the reason that you get those more mature crowds with those RPG games is that there is. When you're playing like a platformer, there's not so much like a storyline, right? You can't just like discuss the lore of Donkey Kong Country 2. It doesn't,
Don't make me get into
We will be doing that.
It probably will happen, but it really is kind of an experience that's less about the optimization and more about just the experience of seeing the whole game and witnessing the story unfold again, and it's just kind of reliving an experience, so to speak. And so people, I think, are drawn to that and have their questions associated with whether it's, what's going on in the story at the moment, or, oh, that boss, I don't remember it being that easy. What did you do there?
Yeah,
Something like that.
I think another thing I wanted to point out with the people that are submitting games for this, we're not talking just a guy that likes Final Fantasy VI and picked it up. Pretty much every game has the top tier player submitting to this marathon. And like Final Fantasy IV has a bunch of submissions for 64 Stair Glitch, but Bick, Nerm, The Roth, No Cash are all within like 2 minutes of each other, and we're talking world record time, so. And then Stinger PA submitted for Secret of Mana, Essentia submitted for games, Darkwing Duck submitted for games, LCC submitted,
Alta on there for
Superstar, El Magus submitted a bunch of games. And so Poexel, of course, is hosting, so he's got games coming in. Andy Perfect did Earthbound.
I see that on there,
And so all these people submitting are not only putting these games that are pretty nostalgic for most people, but they're the best at what they do. And so I think it's a really unique thing where Crystals for Life, I think, was very successful, but being in Canada like it was hard for people to attend. So Utah is kind of like a pretty good spot for a lot of people to be able to get to. And just having this amount of top tier runners running these games, I think it should be a pretty successful thing.
Yeah.
It's actually, when you break it down, because we say, oh, there's barely 3 pages of submissions here. They are all very long games, and they're only filling 5 days of the marathon. It's actually going to be a stacked lineup once they finally they have to turn away some good submissions.
Absolutely.
So this isn't just the charity event, not so much like for whatever charity they're raising money for, but literally the charity event where, oh, everybody gets their RPG run that you can
Well, and so I hate to bring this up because it feels like this is kind of the taboo topic, but it does seem to me like if you had the issue of turning people away, that an RPG marathon would be well suited to having that dual stream, because if you aren't a fan of game number 1, you're sitting out 7-8 hours. Right.
That's the thing, though, with this community that watches these RPG speedruns. You'd be hard pressed to find a game on Game Boy Advance or a game on PlayStation 3 that these guys aren't going to want to watch.
They're gonna be there
because they're so familiar with the lore of series and games. And that was actually a thing I had to think about at DeuceCon, because the Final Fantasy IV run that Nerm did was at the same time the Final Fantasy VI run was at Chicagothon with Powexel, like the
Oh,
exact
okay.
same time on the exact same day. And so I ended up moving Nerm's Run because knowing all the people in both communities and knowing the viewers, they're going to be multi-twitching or they're going to be having to choose between one of
Right,
the
pick
two
and
because they
choose.
want to see both runs, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see like what the total number of offerings is for. There's obviously 2 days left here before this wraps up, but looking so far like they're going to have no problem filling the schedule.
No, not at all.
And it should be. I believe early 2015 is the slated time. I don't know. Did we?
Yeah,
It's
we're looking at
March
May.
or May.
Oh,
That's right. I'm sorry.
yeah, I believe it's May.
All right.
So a couple months in between it and SGDQ, which
Should it should be enough separation there to kind of give it its chance to stand out as well. So very cool stuff. We'll see what comes of that, and I guess we'll move on now and talk about our next topic, which is the Best of NES Marathon, which just wrapped up recently here.
Shoutouts to Bad Breaks.
Yeah, shoutouts to Bad Breaks. Shoutouts to everybody involved over there on the Ledendi stream doing the Best of NES. What are your guys' thoughts on what you saw in the Best of NES Marathon? Whether it was specific games or just the concept itself, do you think it pulled through? Spike Vegeta, let's go to you.
Yeah, I guess I can speak a little more from it conceptually. I was pretty busy during most of the marathon, but I was able to see it during certain chunks. And, it was pretty much everything that I kind of wanted it to be when, we were all doing our production meeting many, many months ago, and Sinister One dropped the truth or dropped the bomb that they were going to be having this. And, I've always said it about all these, quote unquote, little marathons that go on in our community that, oh, it's such a wonderful celebration of the community, or it's such a wonderful celebration of the NES, but it really is. It's so cool that our community in the last 3-4 years has grown to the point where they can say, you know what, whenever you all talked about, hey, let's take all the best video games of all time. In this instance, the 100 best NES games of all time. And we're going to speed run through them. And not even at a low level. Say what you want about whatever they advertised of world champions. Everyone was really, really good at their game that they had on. They were able to speed run through all of these in just a few days. I think that's really, really cool that they were able to pull that off. Every time I checked in, the runs obviously were at their highest quality. I know, Golden, you got to be in a call during Ohan's Mega Man 6 run. Just a bunch of really cool stuff. I'm glad they were able to do this. And, not to jump ahead too much, but I'm looking forward to the Best of SNES Marathon.
Who's gonna do that? That's obviously the immediate follow-up question.
Right.
It's gonna happen eventually, that's for sure.
For sure.
I guess, Deuce, do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I really think just knowing the people involved with getting it started and, watching them kind of go through the process, and it really turned out, I think, the way that they wanted. And the whole theme of it being, the world record runners and all these NES games, I got to watch a majority of it, and it didn't disappoint at any time. And, running NES games, I know, Golden, that you've run some, and I don't know if Spike has or not, but it is kind of a different feel than running other games because it seems so simplistic to, like I ran Contra. So it seems like such a simple thing, but to have these really top tier times in these games, you'll not only have to play at a really demanding level, even if it's a 5 to 10 minute game, but you really have to understand the mechanics of the game and understand exactly how everything works. And I think what Bad Breaks and the Ledendi guys ended up putting together really represented that well. And watching, I was skeptical about watching this Tetris speed run, about having a top score speed run.
Right.
And I was fixed to the screen, and because this guy not only is playing Tetris faster than I can even look at the next piece coming down, but he's explaining everything through the entire run, and to see all these games that everybody's familiar with. And that's kind of the beauty of having a Best of NES marathon is even if you don't know the name of a game or you aren't really familiar with it, there's something familiar about NES games, and you can see one little teeny sprite that you may have seen 20 years ago if you're as old as I am. And you go oh man, I totally forgot about this game. And then you're going, holy crap, this guy is smoking it, and so to see games like that the whole time. And I really liked that they incorporated races. Like the K-Mac and JC race was really cool because they've both been just going back and forth in Simon's Quest, and it's been like this really tight race. And then I know that they had a Nightmare on Elm Street race, which I'm super fond of that game because it's amazing. But there's just really, to me, there's only room to improve on stuff like this because you can take online marathons and maybe somebody will do a SNES one, but even if they do another NES one, it would still be really amazing.
And here's my thought on that too, is that this is the kind of marathon that's suited for online. I think if you try to do this as a live marathon, you would have a tough time, first of all, corralling everybody to attend an event like this because it is such an international thing. But at the same time, I think it's a little bit harder sell than your typical marathon that tries to blend the consoles and appeal to a larger audience. It's very cool to see kind of a I guess you could say niche audience, although I don't know that the NES crowd is necessarily niche, but it's cool to see that they get their marathon and then everybody kind of has their weekend to participate in. And I think it does lead to follow-up questions like, hey, where's the SNES one? Are we going to see maybe not even necessarily SNES, but just pick your console. We're at the point in a lot of games where you could easily do something like that, but
the community is getting bigger every single day.
Right. But the thing about, I think you kind of mentioned it a little bit there, about the NES games in particular, is that it just feels like on average, if you take an NES game, it's broken more than a lot of other consoles. It doesn't matter what game it is. I mean, you can maybe say the N64 has its fair share of busted games too, but it just feels like no matter what NES game you pick, there's going to be something wrong with it, and that just kind of leads to entertainment.
Yeah, and the NES games, like, they've got that going for it. It's also just kind of going back to what Dusler was saying. It's got the history behind it.
Yeah.
It does have very much that feel of, like, documentaries, like King of Kong, where these games have been around for a very long time. It usually is. Maybe they're a little more mature crowd that's going for these records. That, yes, people do know these games to some extent. They've been around for forever. No knock on, a lot of the games like I run the communities I'm in, where we're talking about games that are maybe not even a year old.
Right.
To say we have brought together which is easier with an online marathon, all these world record holders or close to world record holders for all these games was a pretty special feat. Again, shout outs to Bad Breaks.
No, and that's the thing too, is that there's storylines there. The people are almost as prominent as the games they're playing, right? Like you're associating Mega Man with Ohan, you're associating Andrew G with Mario, there's storylines there to be had just by the player who's playing, let alone the game itself. So yeah, I think overall it was really successful. And I guess we're looking forward to Best of SNES, which is probably going to happen. I don't know whether or not it's Ludendi. Somebody's probably already taken the idea and running with it. So
I'm curious to see if it spawns kind of like how TMR's NES Mania spawned infinite replicas on every different system. If something happens,
I'm out to
like
beat
that.
all of the TurboGrafx games. Like, good luck, buddy.
All 16.
Yeah.
All right.
Atari Jaguar world record holder.
There we go. All right, let's move on, guys. Let's talk about this week's record, and I guess I'm going to throw this one over to Spike since he's quite the expert on it. But we're looking at Chrono Trigger this week. So,
first of all, we had to have this on because this is the coolest world record time: 3 hours, 3 minutes, and 3 seconds.
Sounds like a video game name.
030303.
So what you're seeing here, so this game has come a long way in the last few years. A lot of this stuff was discovered, kind of brought to fruition, I guess, by Obda Jr., who famously ran this game at AGDQ 2014. Mm-hmm. What you're noticing right here, right now, is that he's actually skipping a boss fight here with Hecarim. It's a very annoying, very long-winded boss fight. And that's from, I can't explain exactly how it works, but you're able to essentially take the save point, and by pause buffering, you're able to move the save point to another point in the screen. And by quitting out of the game and loading back in on the same frame that Hecarim would have started fighting you, you somehow skip over the boss trigger. And you just kill him, and it's all good.
And you even hear it here, too. The boss music cues up like you're going to fight him, but the text just keeps going. And
yeah. And you've got there's some pretty interesting boss skips in this game where you can still move your fighting animation sprite around the screen. It's pretty nutty. So, yeah, there's a lot of that going on in this game. Another thing coming up soon that you're going to see is that you can also, obviously in any RPG speedrun, one of the biggest problems is all of the RNG. Well, there's actually a great way to manipulate every single fight in this game. Right now, you're about to see, this is one of the more famous fights in the game, the battle with Flea. And you might notice here that Flea's not going to do that much during this. By actually saving the game, quitting, and then loading it on an exact frame, which generally what I've seen RTAers of this do is they'll just scroll through their 3 selected files, and they just know after like 9 rotations, that's when I select it. They're able to manipulate everything in the fight, at least from the enemy standpoint, to go exactly how you need it to go. You can also manipulate exactly what your stamina gauge is at the opening of the fight. So again, as you notice here, he manipulated it in a way to where Flea has not, there was like an opening attack, and since then, Frog's just gonna attack Flea to death. So
I like that.
I remember famously at HDQ 2014, Obda did this and then just sat the controller down, took a few selfies, had a drink of water, and just let this fight take care of itself.
Didn't really have to worry about it, yeah.
No, not at all. So, yeah, again, a lot of cool ways that this is broken up. A lot of this came from the task that Anichi, who actually still has the segmented run of this on SDA, he put together a task a few years later, and then I guess Obda read the notes for that and then was like, oh, we could actually utilize a lot of this to benefit. So, yeah, Flea, hard boss fight there. And then right here, the last thing we want to show off, the biggest wall, I guess, in this game was the final battles with Lavos, that generally old segmented runs had to level up for a good 30 minutes in the 65 million BC era in order to get through the game. However, for whatever reason, utilizing this glitch where if you die, or it's not a glitch, but you have an item called the Green Dream that gives you an automatic re-raise. If you've got, as you see here, Frog, and it doesn't matter what character it is, but that he utilizes Frog, at the right amount of stamina, for whatever reason, when you are re-raised, you keep that stamina, and then you're able to access the menu, use an elixir, and actually throw it at the boss. Now, normally you're not supposed to be able to do that to bosses or just to your non-party members in this game. But for whatever reason, you get a small window in there where you're able to do it, throw an elixir, causes the HP underflow glitch, and boom, there goes Lavos. And that's actually how they defeat both Lavos Core and the Lavos Alien fight. So it's amazing, kind of like these are almost like my favorite aspects of speedrunning, when there's like this rich history of how all this stuff had to come
gets
together.
Incorporated into the run, yeah.
Right. Otherwise, it just isn't going to work. It's like, okay, all these little glitches and stuff are cool, but you're still going to have to grind for 30 minutes in 65 million BC.
Yeah, and I mean, that's obviously the concern with RPG runs is, if it's one thing if it's a platformer where, hey, it doesn't matter if I skip to the end of the game, all I got to do is, platform through it correctly and I'm good.
Yeah,
but
right.
RPGs especially, there's kind of a balance with, okay, does me skipping this content benefit me, or am I, putting myself at risk there? So it's cool to see that you're able to actually get through the rest of that run there.
And just to go ahead and say again, I talked about Chrono Trigger the whole time, but big shout outs to El Magus. This game had kind of become a runner. I believe his name was Oda Vino over the last year or so since Obda kind of put down the game, and he had manipulated this game to what we thought was its fullest extent. And so shout outs to El Magus, also a Donkey Kong Country 2 runner, who
seems to be
lump him in with us.
Yeah, in the family there. So
they need their RPGs, man.
Seemed appropriate to include it. So
El Magus is actually a really good friend of mine, and a couple notes on the run is he actually did it on emulator, which is, if anybody's run RPGs, it's very, very difficult to run RPGs on emulator just because of lag and menuing. And his controller is also pretty bad, so he drops inputs a lot. And by his estimation, once he gets it on console, he said sub 3 is absolutely possible.
Wow.
So
that's minutes we're talking there. Yeah.
There's some optimization left there. He hasn't even really been running the game that long, but Magus is also kind of notorious around the RPG community for, I think he did like maybe 5 Final Fantasy VI runs and had the second best time. And
Wow.
just,
He's
you know, his entire family, his mom actually would import, he's from Germany, so his mom would import NSTC games so they could play them when he was a kid. And so his entire family is really into RPGs, and he's very familiar with so many games, like on a just a crazy detailed level that
Yeah.
he understands equipment. You know, people will be talking about a game that he doesn't run, and he'll be like, "Oh, why don't you go grab this instead? It gives
right.
you
That's
+5
significantly
agility."
better. Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, really? Yeah." And that's same thing with Final Fantasy IV. You know, he came in and him and I really dissected equipment, and just the way he thinks about RPGs and the way that he can execute them is, I think this run really shows that, because he's relatively, I don't want to say he's new to the game. He ran it for a while, but he just learned the new route like in the last 2 months probably. So
Yeah,
really,
and he's
big
one of
shout-outs to
those
him.
guys that every time you tune into a stream, he's playing something else too. He doesn't,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
doesn't have to stick around very long for any particular game to get good at it. So
Yep.
fun to watch. And now it's time for the opposite of the record setter. This is not quite a record setter. This
We're
is
going from Task Attack to Spike Vegeta's
that's-
screen. All right, good.
all right. It's time for Glitch Please here. This one coming to us. This has actually been in our inbox for a while, but it's pretty good, so we thought we'd bring it back. It's Oats and Goats playing Mario 64. You can see here he takes a little bit of damage and is going to try to remedy it. So goes over here to this box. Unfortunately, this box has a 1-up, not coins. All right, so there's some coins right there. All right, let's go for it.
Don't do it.
Oh no.
Generally,
So good.
if you're a runner of Mario 64, what you quickly learn is when you're in a bad situation, it doesn't get better when you go next to a bully
No.
Avoid
Stay
bullying.
far away.
at all costs.
So
That's pretty good.
That's
There were a lot of I love that there were a lot of coins coming up that were just on.
I thought it was interesting that he selected that spot to stop. I mean, knowing that there's
Yeah.
the heart piece up
Yeah.
ahead, you know, could have gone for that. I think there's like a row of coins along the way as well. He could have just waited, but felt the urge to heal himself right then and there, and now he paid the price. Now we know why that hole exists in that platform. Anyway, I always wondered, like,
But to say, I've never
Troll
seen
hole for
anyone
sure,
ever use that hole.
whether willingly or unwillingly, I don't think I've ever seen anyone fall in that hole or use it for anything. So, learning something new today. Thanks again for the submission. And just a reminder, because we are running low on submissions, that we do kind of operate off of what our viewers submit to us. So if something weird happens to you during one of your playthroughs, or something amazing, maybe you set a record and would like it featured on the show, hit us up here on our social media, our lovely fingers pointing in the lovely direction of Northwest.
Wrong way. Whoop.
Yeah,
there we
I know.
go.
It's so hard.
It's hard. It's
I
impossible.
have to think about it so hard.
Yeah. So I still get it wrong. Yeah, like the 30 weeks in or however many weeks in we are now. So be sure to send us those. And I guess with that in mind, it's time for the Q&A with the chat, guys. It's time for the boss rush. So if it will load. We're having trouble loading the segments today. I don't know what's happening there, but there it is.
Don't we?
I'm having trouble loading the segments. I tried to pawn it off on
I have done
the
nothing
co-hosts too. Collectively, we can't do it. It's all our problem. By the way, Task Attack has completed, I think, like 3 or 4 games in the time
I'm
we've
about to
hosted.
say,
Yeah,
it's
it's definitely
I
some
keep looking up.
Sonic
I'm like,
and, yeah.
Look over, like we're in the middle of one segment, it's playing Sonic, and then by the time we flip back, oh yeah, now we're on Metroid. All right,
they're like almost done with Zero Mission.
So,
Alright, sick.
yeah,
The one thing I'll say during this is a cool channel. I did not this how new is this?
this is, I believe, less than like a week old or
Yeah,
something.
just
So
a couple
I want
days,
to
man.
give a shout out to, I believe it's Wilson50 is his name, the guy that created this particular stream. So a big shout outs to him. Hopefully I got the name right. I'm pretty sure it's Wilson50.
And is he like kind of a famous tasser, or I'm not?
As far as I know, I'm not sure if it's a tasser, but just a fan in general wanted to create this. So unless somebody wants to correct me,
have like kind of a watch party that's
Yeah.
constantly going on.
Absolutely.
This
I
is
like to see
definitely-
one of these for
Passes.
speed runs.
yeah, I thought about doing something like this last year. Started downloading TASes, and then I don't remember if I asked like Tompa or who I asked, but I asked somebody about it, like, hey, is this a cool idea? And I got this response that was like, don't do it. Like the Tassers will come and get you. Like, But I think it's a great idea, and I hope that like if anybody's opposed to it, I hope they keep it to themselves because I think it's an awesome stream. So I'm glad to see somebody doing it, and hopefully it just means more attention for the Tassers themselves.
I think
for the work
Tasses
they
are
put in.
starting to become more of a pivotal part of speedruns as well. It seems like when I first got into the community, Tasses were really known about, and certain people would look into them. But now it seems like almost everybody looks at Tasses for ways to improve their time.
Yeah,
And
it really
there's
is.
certain people that are improving Tasses in real time. And so Tassers are getting more involved with our community because we're having to go back.
Right, it's a
with
collaboration.
them and,
It's,
like, oh, you did this real time. Now we're going to crush it frame
Right.
by frame, and just save 3 minutes or whatever it happens to be.
all right, we got some questions here from the chat now that we stalled long enough. We've got Deuce. How was the football game?
The football game was actually really cool. I went to UT West Virginia today. So
Okay.
it was pretty good.
Okay.
I had to leave early to be on time for this actually.
Oh well, you
But-
should have told us. We
but it
would have
was
let
really
you stay.
good.
But
What
All right.
happened? West Virginia was looking good these past few weeks.
Dude, that first half was it was really cool since my family's here from Alaska. They've never been to like a big football game or any kind of UT sporting event. So for them to be there and see the crowd being as hype as it was and really just go into halftime with such a huge margin, just really cool.
all right, we have another question here. So Eggman wants to know when's DeuceCon 2. He's asking the big questions.
DeuceCon 2, I'm actually in the process of starting like pre-planning for DeuceCon 2. I've already got quite a few people confirmed for next year, new runners that weren't last year or this year, I guess. A lot of people from Europe are starting to show interest. So I know like El Magus was supposed to come this year, and due to some personal stuff, he wasn't able to attend, but he's said 100% he'll be here next year. So, if you're interested in DeuceCon next year, if it's something you'd like to do, I'll definitely I'd say but in January by the latest, I'll have another thread up on the SDA forum starting to really just get interest from who's going to be there. And based upon that, I'm going to see if I need to extend it into a larger venue. There's a lot of hotels close to my place, or if it's something I can keep at my house. But kind of going off of Golden's question earlier, I'm not really opposed to expanding it, as long as it keeps its kind of its core values, as cheesy as that sounds.
No,
and people are
that's-
just coming, for the
Well,
right reasons, then absolutely. I'd like
I
to
think
make
that's
it
a fair
bigger.
point, though. I mean, the obvious comparison is the GDQ. I mean, it started out as a very small,
Yeah.
this is something that takes place in someone's house, and then the next thing you know is this big, it's its own company now at this point. So,
Well, I can say
not
that-
to tell you like, oh, start thinking about your company
Absolutely.
or anything, but
But I can say absolutely that there will never be any sort of tests or any sort of, even if it's questionable by some parties involved, let's play of any kind, because it's a speedrunning community meetup and it'll stay that way as long as I'm a part of it.
I think that's
Nice.
pretty cool. Yeah. So there we go. That's your answer. I wasn't expecting to like have the details for DeuceCon 2, but here we go. We got them.
You heard it here first, people.
Okay, Duckfist continuing to try to get spoilers here from the three of us. What are your next speedrunning projects, everyone?
Oh.
Next speedrunning projects.
I'll start because I already know exactly what mine are going to be.
All right.
So once I get 40, either sub 4110 or 40 in Donkey Kong Country 2, my next platformer is actually going to be Mario 64.
Nice.
And once Stinger's going to hate me for saying this, but once I cut the Stinger in Secret of Mana 1-Player 2 controller,
Oh,
I actually just purchased Panzer Dragoon Saga on Sega Saturn, so I'll be routing and running that
now
game.
there's a series I haven't heard in a long time. That's a good one. Interesting. That's not on Rails, right? That's
No, that's actually pretty much like the rarest Sega Saturn game. It's a JRPG that's
oh, okay.
in
Maybe I'm
that
thinking
series.
of. Am I thinking of something else?
Zui, Panzer Dragoon's
Dragoon
Zui,
Orta.
maybe?
I'm
Yeah, so
thinking
it's,
of Orta.
it's Panzer Dragoon and then Zui, and then there's another one. But Saga was really like a kind of a relatively unknown one that if you look it up, though, the reviews and everything for it are absolutely amazing. It's a really good game.
It's
Okay.
like the last Saturn game or close to.
Interesting.
I remember. Yeah,
Pretty
it was-
much,
that was
yeah.
the best.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to look it up after the show here. So Spike, Next hot game for Spike.
Well, I've got a bunch of current projects that I'm still working on.
I'm not getting out of my current projects. I'm
I've
stuck.
got my Kingdom Hearts and stuff. One I will go ahead and throw out there that I still want to get.
I'm holding you to this.
Is I still really want to learn the warpless category for Mario 3. That has always seemed like a really fun speed game. If nothing else, just grinding ILs for that seems super satisfying. The levels are so short, they're so speedy. Like, I don't know. That's definitely one. And I guess if I had to throw out another one just to throw a curveball, I will say I really enjoyed Shovel Knight yesterday. So
you're going to be one of them. Here we go.
I'm just hopping on the Duckfist bandwagon.
I really like.
Yeah, can you believe? Gee, I wonder now if Fiesel had asked the question, would you have said 8 Eyes and Hydlide? Like, I don't know.
I don't think I would have said 8 Eyes and Hydlide.
Probably not. No matter what. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh man.
All right.
Oh, because Duckfist talked about.
Yeah. I get it now. I didn't understand. Yeah.
Coattails, buddy.
Excuses.
Shut up. Why do I come back every time? What do you want to speedrun?
Oh man, I hate that I'm gonna admit it too, because Duckfist asked the question, but so renowned RPG hater apparently, Golden here. I don't know why, like I have this reputation that I'm against RPGs or whatever, but I've been diving into the NES version of Final Fantasy II. I've been looking at that, and that's been interesting to me, mostly because when I started doing BCAS recently, I liked the routing element of that, and I don't really care so much about my optimization of that run, but it was just kind of new and fresh, and not having things to rely on. It was fun to kind of dive in and kind of be the, I don't know, what did you want to call it, like the first person to kind of explore it or whatever, and encourage other people to try and play off of that. So I'm kind of doing that same thing with Final Fantasy II. There are some things out there, some notes and such, but so far most of what we've been able to find has been Japanese only, and there aren't videos of runs. That would be too convenient. So it's all just, like notepads, hundreds of lines of text in Japanese, and trying to translate that and figure out what's going on there. So, so it's a combination of that, and then just like learning elementary task stuff, which Duckfist has been really helpful with me so far. I'm basically the tasking dummy. So, or just even like looking at memory values and stuff, just learning how to do that. And it's been interesting, but there are some parallels we found so far between 2 and FF1 and 3. They kind of play to similar mechanics, so just discovering things that work in 2 that worked in other games. The cure glitch is still there, where you can skip battles with that.
Nice.
But
can 2 possibly be as broken as 3?
It possibly could. I mean, it's yet to be discovered, I guess, the full extent of it. But there are some limitations we've discovered as well. So the cure trick only works if you have an eligible party member to be cured. So you can't just cure someone at max health and skip the battle. They actually have to have taken damage. But I mean, that game's interesting too with its wacky stats, how they get leveled up as far as, you have to take damage to raise your HP, or you have to cast spells to raise your MP, that kind of thing. Right. So there's a lot of just possibilities, I guess, in that game, and I'm curious to see what happens there. Don't hold me to ever doing a run, but I'm having fun exploring it.
You can't have that kind of preface, and don't hold me to it, though.
That's right.
I've been dissecting thousands
I've been
of
digging.
lines of
I've been digging
Japanese,
deep, but I just don't want you to get the wrong impression. Like I could drop it at any point, but I'm having fun with it now. So.
Hey, sometimes, like, I'm the kind of person, my favorite point with a run is routing. I love routing speedruns. So
well, and that's the thing, is a lot of the games that I've played prior to this, it's been more just like copy what's already out there.
Yeah, it's a finished product. Yeah.
So it's fun to kind of have a different approach to it for once, where it's, hey, the stuff that you're finding might be known, but it's not out there yet. Like, people aren't aware of what's going on, or it's just cool to see the possibilities, I guess, and where it goes. So
for sure.
I have a question, actually, since we're doing a Q&A. Can we expect either of you two at DeuceCon next year?
I guess we'll have to see.
That's a big one, but
I would just like to say every bit of me wanted to be there this year, and I know, Deuce, you were always in contact with me trying to figure it out. If I was not on tour during DeuceCon, I absolutely would have been there.
I remember you talking about it leading up to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely would have come over. That sounded like hella fun. So,
Right.
yeah, if there's not something going on next year, if I'm not, putting bread on my table, then I will be there.
I'm not putting
guarantee
bread on my
I have
table.
bread on my table.
Yeah,
I'm just
there you
saying.
go.
It's
Yeah.
rye,
Well,
but it's bread.
And as far as I'm concerned, I'm actually thinking about skipping SGDQ next year and trying some other things. So I don't know what that entails necessarily, but I've thought about just, going to GDQs over and over again. You kind of get the same experience. It might be good to, whether it's a DeuceCon or ESA or whatever it might be, just to try something different and see what's out there. Maybe even something not speedrunning related, maybe just like a PAX or an Evo or something, just to try something else. And
MagFest is coming up.
that's right. See what's out there. So cool stuff. Our TAS is not going to complete Metroid by the end of the episode, but
I might change my next game to Zero Mission after watching.
yeah,
this.
there we go.
Pretty
I
awesome.
already learned.
It looks like a cool game.
It is a very
does,
interesting
yeah.
game, yeah. All right, well, I guess I'm going to ask Spike to find, well, maybe I won't because you're going to give the speech. I'll find the raid target.
Okay.
You're going to give...
That's
That's right. I know you wanted this so long, so you were asking like the start of the week. Please give me the speech.
nice. All right. What was I
Here
gonna
you go.
talk
Yeah,
about?
what, do you remember your topic or do I got to clue you in? Okay.
No. Okay, so I'd like to just go ahead and plug something, and this is not for me to make money to get to AGDQ. This actually isn't raising money for me at all. But any of you who might be here, I don't know if any of you are maybe fans of my channel or anything, or maybe fans of Kingdom Hearts, but we're actually going to be having a community Kingdom Hearts marathon that will be going on next weekend. It'll be actually going November 14th through the 18th. And what the goal of it is we will be raising money to get a lot of the other big time community members. The Kingdom Hearts community has blown up the last 2 years from a speedrunning standpoint. And we're going to be, Deuce was talking about living in Alaska. One of the best runners of one of the games we'd be possibly running is actually from Alaska himself, Terizzle.
Yeah.
So we're definitely trying to raise money to get him there. Other big names like Sonic Shadow Silver 2, who is literally the nicest stream viewer you could ever meet, and an amazing Kingdom Hearts 1 runner. Trying to get people like Rebel Watt there, Cyberman. And the cool thing about the marathon itself is that we've got every single game in the Kingdom Hearts the Kingdom Hearts franchise represented at least once. We got everyone is at world record caliber with all them. World champions only. We're going to steal from Best of NES Marathon. So it's going to be going on next weekend. If you guys can show up, if nothing else, just watch it, talk about it, tweet
Did
about
you
it.
mention the name of the channel? I wasn't sure if you said it or not.
We are either going to host it on my channel or we're going to host it on one of the biscuits, either biscuit or bloody biscuit.
Okay, so stay tuned though. Not confirmed yet. It'll be
not 100% confirmed at this point. I think it's likely going to be on my channel.
okay.
But yeah,
Well,
there's a lot of other Kingdom Hearts streams. They've got banners for it going and everything, and it's just a really wonderful celebration of how many people have come along and really pushed the entire Kingdom Hearts franchise to great speedrunning links. The optimization has been crazy over the years. So if you guys can show up for that, it's going to be a lot of fun next week. So let's do it.
Cool. All right,
Make
we'll
sure
look forward to it.
host, too, because hosting is such a powerful tool now for events like that.
It really is. You're getting a bunch of hosts for DeuceCon.
I had
right?
over 20 streams hosting me every day and new people coming in all the time. And that really contributes to, if it's a game you're interested in, even if your viewers don't like it, they'll see you're online and they can check out something cool and hopefully follow some cool channels.
Sounds good. All right, guys. Thanks again so much for joining me this week. And thanks to our awesome friend TAS Attack here. That's actually where I'm gonna send you guys there, but rather than having you raid in the traditional fashion, I would just like you to vote for the next task that you want to watch, which you can do by typing 1, 2, or 3. So all you got to do is pick 1 for Gradius, 2 for Wario Land, and 3 for Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. So head on over there, pick one of those, check it out. And that's it for now. Just remember that your run is not over until you hit the final split. We'll see you next week.